Hello friends, today we will do chapter number 12, Media, Then and Now. Let us read about the media and how it has evolved over the years. From Instagram stories to being on a web series, it is our constant thirst for stories that all forms of media exploit to make us sit in front of screens for hours. To appreciate the importance of media, one must know its origin. The history of media is essentially the history of storytelling itself. Over the centuries, the need to create various forms of media was born out of humanity's desire to share a story with as many people as possible. Cave art was mankind's first intellectual pursuit. For the first time in history, humans were able to leave something behind for future generations via the medium of the walls inside a cave. While it gave rise to a collective memory for the cavemen of those times, it was also the precursor to media as we know it today. However, the creation of mass media had to wait for a very long time. In the meantime, the stories had to be oral or drawn on walls. It took thousands of years for mankind to put them on paper. Paper was invented in China in around 100 BC. Another 1500 years had to pass before Johannes Gutenberg built the first printing press. Gutenberg's printing press was the first mass media. For the first time in history, books could be mass produced, although the ability to read these books was still limited to the elite of the society for a very long time. So the actual audience for the medium of books was still very limited in those days. That changed over centuries, and so did the forms of media. By the early 17th century, the first newspapers appeared. However, due to lack of literacy, readership was limited as more people learned to read and write. The reach of mass media grew. The handwritten news sheets, popular in Venice as early as 1566, were the direct ancestors of the modern newspaper. The first modern newspapers were printed in Germany in 1609. The first major newspaper was perhaps the Times of London. In 1814, it acquired a printing press capable of making over 1,000 copies an hour. It was soon adapted to print on both sides of a page at once. This innovation made newspapers cheaper and thus available to a large part of the population. By the late 1840s, telegraph networks linked various cities and permitted overnight news reporting. The invention of wood pulp paper making in the 1840s further reduced the cost of newsprint. Newspapers were the first form of media to have a widespread and loyal audience. People couldn't wait to get their hands on a fresh copy first thing in the morning. They couldn't wait to read what was new with the world. They were the first captive media audience, and they were addicted to news. The next major change was the introduction of photos to newspaper. A picture of barricades in Paris during an uprising on 25th June 1848 was the first photograph to be used in the newspaper story. In the initial years, photos were used just to enhance a news story. There were no standalone pictures then, something so common these days. Photography was a cumbersome activity back then. A decent portrait took a lot of time to capture and develop. Hard to imagine those times in the age of instant selfies. However, it didn't take too long for the people to realize the influence of a good picture. Roger Fenton was the first war photographer. He documented the effects of the Crimean War. He laid the groundwork for modern photojournalism. In the 1860s, Matthew Brady's photographs of the US Civil War shocked Americans. Moving pictures came in 1895. The Lumiere brothers gave the first public demonstration of moving pictures in Paris. Interestingly, the moving image of a life-sized train coming towards them shocked the audience and many even ran away. We have come a long way from those days. The film industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry today. Meanwhile, in 1901, Italian inventor Guglielmo Marconi raised a radio antenna attached to a kite on Signal Hill, Newfoundland, Canada, and received a radio signal from Cornwall, England, about 3,400 kilometers away. Marconi made instant communication without wires possible. This was the beginning of the radio. It was the most popular form of mass media until recently. The biggest advantage of radio is that literacy of the audience is not a factor. Even today in India, where large swaths of people continue to be illiterate, radio is used by the government to disseminate news and spread awareness about welfare schemes. Radio's popularity took a big hit when television sets started entering the living rooms. In the West, television had infiltrated most homes by 1950s. Television continues to be one of the most popular forms of mass media. The only real competition to television comes from the internet and social media, the latest in the ever-changing mass media landscape. The origin of the internet can be traced back to 1965. Engineers at Massachusetts Institute of Technology made communication between two computers possible. The technology broke a message down into individual packages which were then reassembled at the receiving computer. This led to the creation of Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, ARPANET, a communication system developed by the US military in 1969. It was the predecessor of the Internet. In 1990, Tim Berners-Lee developed Hypertext Markup Language, HTML, which allowed people to navigate the Internet. The following year, the World Wide Web went into action, and by 1993, there were 600 websites and 2 million computers connected to the Internet. Today, there are over 1 billion websites with about 140,000 new ones created daily. Along the way, the Internet gave rise to the social media phenomenon that has swept the world ever since. Social media is the newest and arguably the most influential form of media today. The meteoric rise of this particular form of media has coincided with the soaring popularity of the internet. Unlike traditional media, which is usually controlled by a small group of powerful people, internet is far more democratic. A major reason for its popularity is the people to people nature of the medium. In TV or radio, mostly the content is created and then catered to the audience in a strict format. The audience's only participation in the entire process is to consume the content. That's not the case with the internet. The content is both created and consumed by the users. This is the single most revolutionary aspect of the internet. Just consider some of the platforms popular today: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. The content for all of these is generated by the users. Also, the interactive aspect of these platforms make them so very popular. Anybody could have their 15 minutes of the fame on the internet. It doesn't matter who you are. Everybody has a shot at going viral. Social media has infiltrated our lives in ways no other media ever could. The sheer magnitude of the internet and social media makes it the most unique form of mass media. And if the numbers are anything to go by, this is only the beginning. Businesses have started promoting their products as much through social media as traditional channels, sometimes even more. While the convenience of social media is making it so popular, it has also raised many concerns around it. More and more individuals are getting addicted to their screens every day. The social media landscape changes so rapidly that users often have fear of missing out. This is not only hurting their physical and mental health but also their social well-being in the real world. We, as a society, must realize that while social media is a great tool for communication and virtual interaction, at the end of the day, it should not replace the real world. Even today, a big part of the human race tries to meet their ends and exists outside the glossy virtual world. We must put down our phones once in a while and experience the wonders of real world. Thank you.